Welcome to the fifth part of my great guitar build-off entry. If you're interested in seeing the build from the start, I'll link it in there and below. Today I'm going to be focusing on the neck to finalize its shape. There's going to be some cutting, sculpting, grinding, drilling, and sanding. So if you're into that type of thing, join me. Let's build a guitar. Hi, I'm Yoav and this is the Electric Luthier in the fifth part of my Orangina build. The body is in the beginning parts of the finishing, and it's time to get the neck in shape for fretting. Headstock shaping is the next step. Because of the slanted, scarf-jointed head, I made a separate template, and I'll probably not even bother with the router. The neck is already cut and routed to shape, and the fretboard is dotted. I check with the center line and the positioning of the machine heads and mark the outline. My trusty jigsaw will help me cut the shape, and then I'll start smoothing the shape. I start with the rougher files and a 60 grit paper and slowly move up to scrapers and fine sandpaper. This rounded rubber block is really great for these type of shapes. When I get to the front of the headstock, there's the odd break angle which would normally be where the nut is, but with the now diagonal nut, I'll just sand to blend it with the angle of the headstock itself. I'll also clean and smooth the nut area from glue and all of that. And let's not forget the little angle the headstock tip has, which will become a lot more visible after the paint, but still needs some filling and sanding. I flip the headstock and now start the sculpting part of the neck. The volute is first here, and at this point I'm also considering an asymmetrical neck, but we'll see how this goes. I'm going for an asymmetrical volute to match the lines of the guitar and the headstock. After all, there's nothing symmetrical about the way the hand is wrapped around the neck. For some reason, I still don't have a good rasp saw, and for removing a thick layer of material, I decide to use a saw and chisel. I mark the thickness on the two sides and make the cuts almost to the desired depth. You really don't want to go too far here. After that, I carefully chisel away the material and allow myself a second round of more superficial cuts and some more chiseling. From here until I get to the final rough shape, it's freestyle with a rounded file and a round $5 carving tool, which does a great job. The same tool with a larger diameter would have also been helpful here. I like putting masking tape on sensitive and pointy parts, especially when working with long files. You often focus on one area and then touch or scrape on somewhere else. I've scratched that masking tape more times than I would like to admit. When the volute is in the right shape, I start moving down the neck and give the neck its shape. A plane would work here too, but I really like this shaver for evening the thickness of the neck. I find I get better control with a two-hand grip here than the way I hold a plane. The long part of the neck is the straightforward part, and then I get to the very unique shape of the heel. Because it kind of blends with the shape of the body as if it were a glue-in neck, it has the elongated part, which also requires some sculpting. And again, I turn to carving and scraping tools to freehand the heel. I do want most of the heel to remain in normal thickness and shape for the comfortable playing, but the top part gets in the way for a lot of the standard tools and techniques I use for most other necks. When the rough shape of the neck is all done, I get back to the connection of the headstock and the back part of the scarf joint. I could sand it smooth, but since it's going to be painted black anyway, I'm going to smooth it with a filler. This way, I'm also not going to remove any material and make it potentially weaker. I'm going to use the same putty as grain filler and actually cover the whole back of the neck to fill the grain. This will also help me hide a few little mistakes, which I'll get to in another video. The result I'm looking for here is just a neck which will be as smooth as possible. I let it dry overnight, and then it's time for plenty of sanding. If I was using it just as grain filler, I would sand it down to bare wood. But in this case, I don't mind a thin layer remaining as long as it's even. At some point, I noticed I also skipped on angling another tip of the headstock according to the design, so I mark it and sand it down as well. Okay, enough fooling around. It's time for radiusing. I'll start with scribbling with a pencil to give me an indication of where I am with the progress. You can also easily see the progress due to the whitish dust slowly being removed. I've attached an 80 grit paper to the radius block, and I try to keep it as centered as I can. After a lot of the pencil has been removed from the side, I mark the center line with the pencil again, and I know that when this is gone, I'm pretty much done. The important thing here is to maintain even pressure along the fretboard and sideways so as not to dig in anywhere. I check with the radius gauge, and when it's all done, I start moving to higher grits. Somewhere after 180 grit, I also go over the surface with a wet rag to tickle the fuzzy grain to stand. This gives me a chance to smooth it. I repeat the process and sand it with 240 grit and then 400. A radiused fretboard now has its final thickness, so I can start measuring for the side dots. There's no special trick here. I measure the center between each two fret slots that require a dot and mark the spot. The double dots will just get the same distance from each fret. I drill the holes with a drill press and a depth stop, although you can do it manually just as well. To match the front dots, these dots were actually punched out from the large ones with a leather punching tool. Apparently, orange dots don't come in all shapes and sizes. The dots are just a hair larger than the holes, so they fit very snugly when I hammer them in. The super glue can be applied before the dots themselves or wicked in after. In any case, make sure to protect your eyes, as the combination of hammer and super glue has a spraying potential. Also, prepare yourself for losing your fingerprints for the next few days. So if your phone or any apps require it, they may not work. You can use gloves, but they're harder to remove when you get glued to your fretboard. I also use tweezers, but these little dots do put up a fight. Eventually they're all in, and I'll start sanding. The side of your fretboard should always be sanded with a sanding beam to maintain straightness. I start with a 60 grit, but only for the dots themselves, and when I reach the wood, I move up to 180. Again, I'll sand up to 240 as the rest of the fretboard. I'll eventually take it up to 600, but not yet. Machine heads are next. Before I drill away, I want to make sure that the 7 tuners I have will actually fit properly on the headstock. So I duplicate my template, and using the same position, I drill 10mm holes. These locking tuners are bulky in the back, but it turns out my planning was good and they all fit. I take my template copy and tape it to my headstock to use as a guide for the drill. When I bring it back from the drill press, I remove the template and very gently use a rimmer to remove any leftovers and smooth the holes. After that, I also like to use my finger or a rounded object to sand the edges of the holes on the front and the back of the headstock. This whole neck is going to be black, and I now wish I've used ebony instead of rosewood. And no, I'm not going to strip it down. Instead, I'm going to dye it black. I'm planning on 2 layers of black oil-based dye, which I will allow for full drying. After the first coat, I'll sand with 400 paper and then 600. This is probably the only part of the guitar which will not receive a clear coat and buffing, so I want it to be smooth to the touch. This neck is now ready for fretting, and we will jump right into it next time. I want to go into details with my new fret press, so it will need the time. If you found this helpful or entertaining, please let me know in the comments and by liking and subscribing. Regardless, you can find much more information on guitar building both on my website, theelectricluthier.com, or any of my channel with many videos such as these. And until next time, go ahead, build a guitar.